It looks like we're ready to begin.
Thank
Okay.
you. We will go ahead and reconvene at 1:38. Ms. Cicchetti, I believe we have our speakers in the audience.
Yeah, let me
Call up the
introduce
item.
the item and let's get ourselves going here this afternoon. Item 25, Industry Perspective, Progress, Challenges, and Recommendations. Presentation and discussion of the hydrogen market from various stakeholder perspectives, including industrial production, transportation, storage, and the end use. Our first speaker is unavailable at this time, so we're going to go to our second speaker on this item, Eleanor Torres, Managing Director of Strategic Advocacy, Port of Long Beach. Ms. Torres, you have 10 minutes to make your presentation. The board members will have 5 minutes to ask you questions. You may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members.
Welcome.
If I may please have my slide presentation deck up. The Port of Long Beach is the second largest container port in the United States. We move about $200 billion with a B dollars worth of cargo annually and support over 2.5 million jobs throughout the nation. Excellent. That's the slide I need. Thank you. The zero slide, one back. As the Port of Long Beach works to become a zero-emission port, we have a signature commitment to decarbonization that we call ZERO. And ZERO has 2 E's. It stands for Zero Emissions Energy Resilient Operations. This is where we coalesce all of our efforts at the port and beyond to achieve a carbon-neutral future. We know that battery electric zero-emission systems and technology have their place, but they also have their limitations. So we expect clean hydrogen to be a big part of the solution. Next slide, please. Ports in California are aggressively pursuing zero-emission and decarbonization goals to meet community health, regional air quality, and climate change needs. The ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach together established goals in 2006 to get to zero emissions for terminal equipment by 2030 and on-road trucks, drayage trucks, by 2035. We will need every tool in the toolbox to be able to get there. Building a robust hydrogen ecosystem in California, as ARCHES is aiming to do, will be critical for our success. For many years, the ports and our terminals have been demonstrating innovative zero-emission equipment in port-related operations, as we are learning about technology suitability in various applications. For some heavy-duty, hard-to-decarbonize operations, we have found that hydrogen fuel cell equipment may be better suited to meet the demands. Hydrogen fueling operations are similar to the existing fueling operations today, reducing the need to change terminal layouts or modify operational cycles to accommodate extended charging times. This also allows for flexibility to move equipment as needed, because you aren't locked into the locations where electrical infrastructure is located. Hydrogen technologies can also be suitable for a wide range of applications to meet various operational demands over extended ranges and for different equipment types. And there is less cost and operational disruption to install the needed fueling infrastructure as compared to electrical upgrades for charging and grid-connected equipment. Hydrogen can also be more reliable. For example, when the state experiences extreme heat waves, ports are often asked to not plug in our vessels, and we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in shore power. Grid reliability is critical to preventing cargo disruptions at our ports. Next slide, please. Today, we are seeing hydrogen fuel cell equipment being demonstrated in terminal operations and deployed on the roads in port drayage. Fuel cell yard tractors began testing in our complex back in 2019. Fuel cell top handlers, including retrofit technologies, began testing in 2022. Fuel cell conversion for rubber-tired gantry cranes have recently begun testing. And we have fuel cell trucks serving both the ports. Ports of Long Beach, Los Angeles, and Oakland, as you heard earlier today by Tyson Eckerly, have all requested substantial funding through ARCHES for deployment of fuel cell equipment in the terminals and the necessary fueling systems to support their operations. And we are very grateful to have been selected as Tier 1 partners to ARCHES. Next slide, please. This is a photo here about 2 years ago in 2022 when the Port of Long Beach brought the ARCHES team to the complex to start the era of hydrogen in the maritime industry. So much has happened since in that short amount of time. ARCHES funding will act as seed money to support the robust deployment of hydrogen fuel cell cargo handling equipment, as well as mobile hydrogen fueling trucks or stations and in-time drayage trucks. The hydrogen technologies and infrastructure that we develop will also put us on the path to decarbonize tugboats, locomotives, and other vehicles used to move cargo, even ocean-going vessels. We're working with ARCHES to enter into a subcontract agreement for $150 million for projects just at Port of Long Beach alone. And we, the Port of Long Beach, will match for a total of $300 million. POLA, Port of Los Angeles, is also working with that same amount for its terminals. We'll be working with our terminal operators on projects spread around the port to purchase cargo handling equipment such as the top handlers, rubber-tired gantry cranes, and yard tractors, all powered by fuel cells. And this will include all the necessary fueling infrastructure. We're still in discussions about community benefits that were discussed earlier. Port of Long Beach prides itself on being a community partner for decades. We have a robust community benefits program that includes a $65 million commitment to the community to support community grants to combat the effects of pollution. To date, we have allocated $45 million of that fund. We also provide $250,000 annually in scholarships for high school and college students, $3 million annually in event sponsorships for community organizations. We host and uplift the workforce community by hosting academies at our local high schools. And we also offer high school internships and college internships. And together with the Port of Los Angeles, we're equal partners in constructing a goods movement training campus, where much of this new technology and zero emissions, including hydrogen fuel cell technology, will be tested, and labor will be trained on this new equipment there. Next slide. The next slide is a snapshot of what today our numbers look like when it comes to our zero emission truck fleet. There are 23,000 trucks registered that do business at the San Pedro Bay Ports Complex, so both LA and Long Beach. In April 2022, we launched our Clean Truck Fund Rate, which will aid in the deployment of zero-emission trucks and infrastructure at the nation's largest port complex. Essentially, cargo owners pay a $10 per TEU, 20 equivalent unit container for loaded containers hauled by non-zero emission drayage trucks in and out of the container terminals at both ports. To date, Port of
2
Long
minutes
Beach alone,
remaining.
Thank you. Port of Long Beach has collected $91 million through the first 30 months of that rate. Next slide, please. This slide demonstrates some of the future applications that we hope to utilize hydrogen for, including locomotives, hovercraft, vessels, power systems, resilience and grid support, as well as shoreside and dredging support, dredging power. Next slide, please. I did just want to bring to your attention some of the challenges that we do have with the transition. And one of it is being cost. Cost is very high to transition to all of this new technology. New trucks can cost zero or hydrogen fuel cell, can cost anywhere between $400,000 and $500,000. And when you have an independent truck driver that's making maybe on average $75,000, You add sales tax, vehicle license tax, insurance, and then if they're receiving a subsidy from the state of California or from the port through our Clean Truck Rate program, all of a sudden they're in a higher tax bracket. It's not free money. And so that is, I think, an area that needs some exploration. And I will end and say, what the board has done in the past, in the 1970s, with solar has just been exceptional. We recently completed a community survey to assess the community's awareness and acceptance of certain ZE projects. And hydrogen was measuring at about the 55 percentile of very favorable. But solar was in the high 70s. And that is because of the work that the board has done in the past to socialize it, to make it a reality. And that's definitely what is needed for hydrogen. We need to pull, it's an all-government approach, looking at it from the tax base also, from income and sales tax, how we can make this a reality for California. And happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for that overview. I really appreciate it. As you were talking about the costs, especially to do the transformation, basically, from, I guess, because you guys have been doing real good on the solar and the electric side. Everything that you've done in the port, and I think somebody mentioned earlier that many of the, not only the vehicles, but just the equipment is now being transferred over, and some is using hydrogen. Is there anything that we should be aware of on the tax credit side moving forward that maybe was a stumbling block when they were looking at it from the solar to electric, and now as we're looking at hydrogen?
I think when it comes to tax credits for the private companies that we do business with our terminal, marine terminal operators, and then the actual manufacturers of the products, tax credits that aren't too restrictive. The intention for us to go to zero emissions is good, and we need to get there. But sometimes people want to get there, go 0 to 100, and get there right away. And during in that process, we overlook near zero options that will improve emissions today, as opposed to completely eliminating emissions maybe 20 years from now. And so any tax credits that are too restrictive on the type of technology that qualifies could have consequences that aren't intended.
And I know you guys have partnered also with Toyota and incorporating this, I guess they call it the tri-gen system. Give us a little background on that. That's kind of interesting how that all works.
Yes, so the tri-gen system at Toyota is very unique. It's one of a kind in the nation. Basically, they produce green hydrogen. They also produce renewable electricity and usable water converted from biogas. And what they do is over 20,000 vehicles come through imported at the port. And before the vehicles are sent off, mostly Mirais, the hydrogen fuel cell Mirai, before they're sent out throughout the United States, they're also serviced and cleaned and washed, and everything is done in a sustainable, renewable way. They found the key. They are able to thrive, be successful, and make money, and also do the right thing and be environmentally forward-thinking. We're honored to have them there at the Port of Long Beach. And I think it goes back to our zero policy. You know, they walk the walk. They don't just produce a hydrogen fuel cell car. They try to do it in the greenest, most possible way, and that's what the Port is also striving to do with our operations.
Thank you. The last question before I turn it back to my members here is moving forward, where do you see possibly some of the barriers as we're looking at moving towards this hydrogen technology?
I think some of the barriers include funding. All of this equipment is very expensive. I think also, there is concern possibly with how climate funding may be available or not be available at the federal level with the new administration. So we're watching that very, very closely, but it's not going to hinder us to keep moving forward. Driving the costs down of hydrogen per unit and the cost of vehicles, that is really critical. We need to prove that it's a viable option here. The benefit of having arches be a part of the ports is tremendous for the state of California because of the volume of cargo that we move and the amounts of equipment that we move. We're an excellent test bed to see if this equipment, vehicles, are really commercially viable. And if we work out the kinks here, it stretches out any state or federal dollars that are then expended to other projects because we will have already tested and worked out all of the problems.
Sounds good. Let me turn it to my board. I think Deputy Controller has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. You mentioned a little bit in your presentation. I want to talk about water use. And water is always going to be an issue in drought-stricken California. So when you're producing hydrogen at the Port of Long Beach, where's this water coming from? Do you have water storage facilities on site?
So the production of hydrogen isn't taking place on other parts of the terminal. That's just the water that I referenced was for the Toyota facility, but we do not currently produce hydrogen on our terminals at the complex.
Understood. And I also wanted to talk about workers training. We were hearing in earlier presentations like targeting high school students and college students, but I'm very concerned about the workers currently that are working across California, for example, at the Port of Long Beach, Kern County, Contra Costa County. These are hardworking people that have always stepped up and fueled our state. So as we're going to transition into this new energy portfolio, in your opinion, do you see this transition being with the skill set that workers currently have, or do they have to go through more training to ensure they have job security?
So because hydrogen fueling is very similar to diesel or other fueling, the transition in terms of training should be very seamless. The also positive aspect of it is we're always trying to protect human-operated jobs. And hydrogen really opens up a wide door in protecting jobs in the port industry and the goods movement industry. But like any profession, and as we move forward to a zero-emission future, training, education is critical across the board. And we're making those significant investments to meet that challenge.
Absolutely. I mean, there's always been a huge concern. Anytime you make a huge overhaul or transition, making sure that these workers that have been busting their butts for so long have a place to call home and have a good way to make a living. My very, very last question, in regards to heavy-duty trucks, if your fueling stations are working at full capacity, how many of these fuel cell vehicles can be filled up in a day? And in the future, will there be an option for fueling at home?
I unfortunately can't speak to that number, but the turnaround time is significantly faster with fuel cell technology than a truck having to, even with the supercharger, with a maybe 250-mile range, having to sit there for 30 minutes to a couple hours, and also having to stop in the middle of their route as well. So it definitely has options, advantages for speed and easeability of doing the fueling.
Can you give me a ballpark number, how much minutes it takes?
I would have to, I believe it's under 30 minutes is my understanding to fuel.
For how much, 250 miles, 400 miles of range?
About 250-mile range.
Got it, thank you.
3 minutes remaining.
Anybody else? I think, Senator, Member Gaines has a question for you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Torres. Appreciate your presentation. And I was looking at your PowerPoint. You had mentioned on that 23,000 trucks had been registered. Now, are those hydrogen vehicles that are in operation? So, okay.
Yeah, no, and unfortunately, so I think on there I have a breakdown of the current breakdown. No, 23,000 of those trucks, we do have to abide by CARB regulations now. So they have to meet certain standards in order for them to do business behind our gates.
Okay.
So we are making progress. About a little under 500 of those trucks are hydrogen fuel cells that have converted to zero emission. The majority are battery electric. We're finding that the farther range, those that require a greater distance, are utilizing the hydrogen fuel cell technology.
Okay.
Yeah, also because of weight too. Weight is going to be a huge issue. You can't, the extra weight that the battery electric technology provides is, it's going to damage our roads, cause, we already have damage, right, to all of our roads and potholes and things like that. And then it adds to the weight of the containers, the cargo that you're adding onto the truck. So hydrogen fuel alleviates those issues.
Oh, okay. Good to know. And then you had mentioned the cost of a hydrogen truck at $400,000 to $500,000. Do you know what that is relative to diesel?
So you can get a used diesel truck for under $100,000 and a newer diesel truck for about $125,000 to $150,000. So a significant difference in cost.
And do you see the cost of the hydrogen trucks dropping over time?
Most definitely, with more tax incentives and more demonstrations, we will definitely see the cost drop.
Yeah, okay. Again, I'm just concerned about if you're that independent trucker, how do you make that leap? How do you make that transition? So, but thank you. I appreciate your presentation.
You're welcome. And I invite you all to come and tour the port any given time. If you do field hearings, we have beautiful facilities there. We'd be very proud to accommodate a hearing at the Port of Long Beach.
I'm sure staff would love to go down there as I look at.
It's
our
not rainy,
executive
it's sunny there.
Thank you. No, thank you for your, your time and coming up here and sharing that with us. I think it's real helpful as we move forward. I'm sure we'll be checking in with you as we look to craft some legislation to make sure that we're covering all the issues that you raised as well.
Thank you for the opportunity. Have a good day. Thank you.
All righty. We go to our next speaker,
Yes.
Jackie Birdsale, Senior Engineering Manager of Fuel Cell Integration Group, Toyota North America. She's on remote.
Oh, I see, okay.
Thank you. You have 10 minutes to make your presentation.
Wonderful. Just like to confirm that you can see my screen and hear my voice.
Loud and clear.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Chair, Board, members of the board, staff members, if you're there in the audience. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about some of the activities in the hydrogen and fuel cell space that Toyota is conducting. I think you're making a great first step here when we talk about barriers. I think the first one is education. So really learning what we're doing in this wonderful state and then going from there to make some effective legislation. So as a bit of background, in 2015, Toyota launched our Environmental Challenge 2050, which included a reduction in carbon related to the vehicle fleet themselves, building the vehicles, our manufacturing facilities, reducing our water usage, increasing our recyclability, and improving our harmony with nature. And it's important to start with this because this is something we started in 2015, and it's a global vision of Toyota, regardless of administration in any of the countries in which we operate. So we are committed to decarbonization. And the way that we address this in our vehicle fleet is through electrification. For us, this means a combination of hybrid electric, plug-in hybrid electric, battery electric, and fuel cell electric. And this then gives the customer the opportunity to choose the powertrain that works best for their lifestyle. And so to that end, in 2015, we launched here in California the 2015 Toyota Mirai. And Mirai in Japanese actually means the future. So we saw this as a vehicle that could really help us achieve our zero emission vehicle targets. We had been at the time developing this vehicle for almost 30 years. So this is a full production vehicle that we not only lease, but sell to the customers. and have over 12,000 on the road now. Then in 2021, we launched our second generation Mirai. I actually purchased this vehicle when it came out. I wanted to drive zero emission. Only opportunities for us then were the battery electric BZ4X or the Toyota Mirai. And for me, thanks to the good work at the state of California, I live within about 10 minutes of 3 hydrogen fueling stations. And so I go to the nearest hydrogen fueling station, takes about 5 minutes to refill. And I personally get 330 miles on a fill in my own Mirai. And so the Mirai takes advantage of a lot of the common components that we have in hybrid and plug-in hybrid and battery electric vehicles. There's so many similar electrified, high voltage components, the power control unit, the battery itself, the electric drive motor. So it's not like they're competing technologies. They're actually synergistic technologies. When we launch one and build more of one, it drops the cost of components and it really benefits all of our electrified portfolio. The only thing unique to the Mirai is that instead of having, for example, gasoline tanks, you have hydrogen tanks that you see here. Again, takes about 5 minutes to refill. And here we're combining the hydrogen and oxygen to create water. That is then the only byproduct that goes out the tailpipe. And the byproduct of that reaction, besides water, is the electricity that then drives the electric motor directly. So we don't store electricity in the battery, we store the energy in the hydrogen and we create electricity from that. So as you heard from Eleanor, this allows us to get a lot more energy content into these hydrogen tanks for less weight than we would for an equivalent battery vehicle. Now, I work out of the hydrogen headquarters that's located in Gardena, which is in Los Angeles. It's a group of business people, regulated or legislative outreach, and then mostly engineers that look to solve any of our climate problems with fuel cell and hydrogen technology. And so back in 2016, we we're thinking a lot of people in our office work at or live in Long Beach, which is the 9th largest port in the world, the 1st largest port in the US. Because of that, there's just a tremendous amount of diesel pollution attributed to not only the diesel semis going in and out, but also to the vehicles operating within the port. The heavy duty trucks that are operating in this region, they resulting in about 40% of the mobile source emissions. And so what we see from this is, higher rates of cancer, poor air quality. And so we thought, well, we have this great technology. At the time we launched our 1st generation Mirai, we understand that it's a commercial technology, our customers love it. Could we use that same technology and put it into a Class 8 semi and pull 80,000 pounds of cargo with zero emissions? So we actually took it to our management, and they said, no, we're Toyota. We don't build trucks. What are you guys doing? So then we went and bought a Kenworth chassis anyways, and without anyone knowing about it, we gutted 2 of our 1st gen Mirais. We shoved the systems into this Kenworth chassis, and we built the world's first ever fuel cell electric truck. And that really captured the attention of the world. Everyone said, okay, this makes a lot of sense. These trucks refill in 15 minutes. They get 200 to 300 miles of all electric range. They're quiet, they're fast because they have that electric motor. Most importantly, they're zero emission. So then we built one more. In the back right, you can see what we call beta. So front one's alpha, back one's beta, pulling the 6 Mirai. And then to the left is the ocean trucks, which we were actually operating around the ports of Long Beach, ports of LA, to demonstrate that this was a real technology. And that, again, is thanks in part to the state of California, who helped to fund this project to demonstrate that this was a real thing that we could do. So here you see a lineup of the 10 trucks that were operating around the port to give us really good data and to ultimately launch us into a place where, as Toyota, we were comfortable building a production commercial strategy around these trucks. Even though, again, this is not what we do. We don't build trucks. But here you can see at our Toyota manufacturing Kentucky plant, we have a new system that we've built that's specifically for integration into the truck. So it fits under the cab, meant to completely replace the diesel engine of a truck. You combine that with however much hydrogen storage you need to get the range that the customer wants. And we have actually started production on this system in TMMK. Now, when we talk about hurdles, I think it's maybe no no secret that Besides the high initial cost of any new technology, right? So that's both battery electric and fuel cell electric. This is just new technology. Nascent technology is going to inherently be more expensive than our established technologies. Infrastructure is really the key. And this is a station that's located in Fountain Valley down here in Los Angeles. It has these 4 fueling dispensers. It can fill one Mirai after another every 5 minutes. It's at this Arco station. It's the exact same customer experience that our customers are used to with their traditional vehicles, but in this case now with zero emissions.
3
so
minutes
this is what we kind of see
remaining.
as the future. I hear you. Thank you. And this is what we need to get in place for not only light duty market, but medium duty and heavy duty. And I'll say we have a lot of issues with these around permitting, around incentivizing these station owners to want to put in these dispensers. I mean, these can be a headache. They can get long lines at their station of hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles. So we really need to do a better job of incentivizing building out these stations the same way as we get away from battery electric vehicles that are being owned by people with single family homes that can charge at home. We need to start to really build out the charging network as well in a way that's robust and redundant. A few kind of good items. One is standardized nozzles receptacles. So every hydrogen station can fill every hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicle in the world. I'll skip over this. This is the fuel cell energy plant that you guys already heard about. We use biogas from Central California. We create hydrogen, water, and electricity for our facility. So this isn't using water. This is actually creating water through a high temperature fuel cell. We looked around the port, thought, what else can we decarbonize? What else can we move to zero emission? As you already saw, we built this utility tractor rig that has been successfully operating around the port and pulling our own parts, as well as this top pick handler. And then we took this same technology, we packaged it into a box, which we so creatively called Mirai in a Box. We use this to power our battery electric or plug-in hybrid electric vehicles where the grid is not available for many reasons I'm sure you're familiar with. We took that same technology, scaled it up to make a fully sustainable microgrid. So this is a 1 megawatt fuel cell here on the bottom left. This is in Colorado at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And what we're demonstrating here is that they are using the wind or the solar directly when the electrical demand is there. When it's not, they use a Nel electrolyzer. They create hydrogen. They store it in these hydrogen tubes. And then they use our fuel cell later to create the electricity to meet the demand when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing. This can be used for backup diesel generators, for offshore power, all different types of applications. Again, hydrogen's a fantastic energy storage mechanism. So we think this is just the start of our decarbonization efforts. I want to thank you all so much for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. And we just heard earlier from the Port of Long Beach, and they shared this tri-gen system that's working with you and with your company, Toyota. And moving forward, I was wondering if there's anything you could share with us, and you kind of touched on it already, of some of the things maybe we need to look at to, one, incentivize and hopefully eliminate some of these obstacles moving forward. Because I know, well, I guess you kind of hit it when you were saying, obviously, you need more stations throughout. Because I was able to test drive Yamirara when you first came out, I think it was back in 2015. And we actually have a station in Santa Monica, and it's real quick to fill it up. I mean, it took just a couple minutes. But, they're far and few apart right now.
That's right. Yeah. Well, first of all, we need to get you in a Gen 2 because that was a Gen 1.
Yeah.
And we have made significant improvements. So please, you or your staff members are welcome to come to our facility in Gardena. Love to give you a ride, show you all the equipment that we have there and the great work that the team in Gardena is doing. But yeah, I think, kind of similar to what we've heard before, funding is a big issue. Of the zero emission infrastructure funding available in the state of California, only about 10% goes to hydrogen. The rest goes to charging infrastructure. So there is an inequity in building out the infrastructure as far as funding. We've been working with the California Energy Commission, or excuse me, the California Air Resources Board on the low carbon fuel standards. So we think that will help to incentivize building out bigger stations, because a mistake we made early on was we built small stations to try to really make the most of our investment. and quickly the demand exceeded the supply. So that's a lesson that we learned. I think, luckily you're located here in a state that has more experience than literally anyone else in the world when it comes to building out hydrogen infrastructure and how to do so effectively. So I think working with people you've already heard from, GoBiz, the ports, I think Hyla will be speaking next, and they have a lot of experience as well with infrastructure. So I am not in any means an infrastructure expert. My forte is all on the demand side, but I'm happy to work with you and your team and brainstorm some ways to help make this happen.
Appreciate it. Let me see if there's a, it looks like we do have some questions. The Deputy Controller, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. I want to thank Toyota and yourself for your presentation today. I have a question here. Has Toyota worked on internal combustion engines using hydrogen? And what is the good and negative things with this approach?
Excellent question. We have in Japan only, and particularly for racing applications. I'd say that the benefits of the ICE is that we can use a lot of our existing manufacturing facilities, as you can imagine. It's a very different manufacturing process to build an internal combustion engine than a fuel cell engine. So that's good. The downside, unfortunately, is that it's much less efficient than a fuel cell. So a fuel cell is all electric. So you're going to take a huge hit on your range. You're going to use a lot more hydrogen to go the same distance with the IC as you would with a fuel cell. And also, since there is still combustion, it's not technically a zero emission vehicle. So those would be the kind of, there's some benefits and downfalls there, but it's definitely something worth investigating more.
Thank you for that. Just to follow up with diesel engines, can that also run on hydrogen?
It would be kind of same image as moving from gasoline to diesel, or excuse me, gasoline to hydrogen is diesel to hydrogen. Absolutely. Yep. You can combust hydrogen in either. So we can take advantage of the facilities. I know a lot of the large truck manufacturers are actually pushing for that. But again, we really need to find a way to make them more efficient. If these vehicles are going to be going long distances, we need to figure out how to get more hydrogen on board.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Member Gaines, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Birdsall. Appreciate your presentation. And I was just curious on this retrofit, if you were able to just replace basically the diesel motor in a heavy-duty truck and convert it to hydrogen, do you know what that cost would be?
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not. So I'm sorry. Are you feeling? So you're referring to replacing it with a fuel cell?
Yeah. Take the diesel motor out and put the fuel cell in.
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So as you already heard from Eleanor, you're looking at 400,000 or 500,000, depending on the truck maker. It's significantly more expensive than diesel right now. So that is something we need to really help incentivize truck operators. If we're regulating them to move to zero emission trucks, then we really need to help them foot that bill. Luckily, once they foot that initial bill, the costs do go down because the operational costs are significantly decreased. But unfortunately, it's not as easy as taking out the diesel motor and putting in the fuel cell. That was initially kind of our thought. But then what happens is, you need to have your hydrogen supply system, right? So you have your hydrogen tanks, you have your battery, because fuel cell vehicles also have batteries because they don't store electricity, they just produce it. So if you're making any excess electricity, like from a generator, like if you're braking, you want to store that. So they have batteries, they have electric motors, they have cooling systems, they have the fuel cell. And if you try to just pop a fuel cell into there in a hydrogen tank, there's too much intricacies of how the systems need to talk to one another and ensure that that power request, that all the communication between the systems are running smoothly. So that was initially our intention, was to do exactly what you're referring to from an engineering perspective. What we found out was it was not possible, and so now we have to provide the entire powertrain, which is the fuel cell engine itself, the electric motor, the battery, and the hydrogen tanks. And that way we can control how all of that system is operating with each other. It's kind of more like a computer system in a truck chassis than just the old mechanical way that we used to do things.
Yeah, but I guess the other pathway would be to retrofit. I mean, I test drove a BMW 7 Series, and it was internal combustion.
That's right.
But it was hydrogen. And
Yep.
they told me when I drove it that, it was a water emission coming out of the tailpipe.
Yes, yeah, I actually drove that same vehicle.
Oh, okay.
And there's a reason why BMW has moved to fuel cell technology. Again, unfortunately, it's just the limitations of internal combustion. You're just not going to get the efficiencies and therefore the range that a lot of customers need using internal combustion of hydrogen. That isn't to say all customers. It's just to say for the targets that we are investigating right now, for us, it makes more sense to do fuel cell technology and get advantage of those high efficiencies versus burning the hydrogen.
Okay. And is there a venting issue? At least they had brought that up when I test drove the BMW, that you had to be careful on the venting. Like storage.
You have a great memory.
Storage
Yes.
within a garage.
Absolutely.
So
Yes, so
has that been
is-
resolved?
Not for so that system was a liquid hydrogen system, and
Okay.
liquid hydrogen is only a liquid at a cryogenic level. So we're talking like minus 423 degrees, right? So the second that you put it in a normal situation, it's going to start to vaporize and vent. That is why all of our systems use gaseous hydrogen.
Okay.
We do not have a venting issue with gaseous hydrogen, but with liquid hydrogen, yes, that is still an issue that we're trying to overcome.
So that's not an issue with the Mariah.
Correct, nor
Yeah.
with any of the products
Okay.
any of the products I just showed you.
Thank you. Appreciate your presentation.
Appreciate your
Thank
time.
you, thank you for your time, and we'll look forward to working with you as we move forward.
Same to you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
All righty. Who do we have next?
Yes, our next speaker that we have is Jason Coble, Head of Hydrogen Strategy and Development, Nikola Motor Company. Mr. Coble, you have 10 minutes to make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the board members for this opportunity. Can everyone hear me okay?
You're loud and clear.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. I'm going to share a presentation with this team. And final check, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Excellent. Again, thank you so much for your time. Jason Coble, Head of Strategy and Development at Nikola. For those who don't know, we were founded in 2015. We're headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona, and we have a manufacturing facility in Coolidge, Arizona. We do manufacture two Class 8 vehicles, and those vehicles are both a battery electric vehicle and a fuel cell electric vehicle. We launched the battery electric in 2022, and then we launched the fuel cell vehicle in 2023. What's unique about Nikola is that we also have an infrastructure business that I represent, which is our business called Hyla, which is our energy brand. We used to say we had the chicken and the egg. With respect to Toyota, they have a much better phrase, which is the flowers and the bees, meaning we get to actually build the infrastructure to ensure that there is a demand for the truck. And so in a lot of cases, out of technology advancements, there is a necessity to create other businesses, and that's what we've done with the infrastructure business. Before I get to highlight the energy side, a little bit more about our two trucks. So both of these are zero emission trucks. The hydrogen fuel cell vehicle has a range of about 500 miles, while the battery electric is 330 miles. Some differences here is that on the battery electric, it's comprised of about 9 batteries, whereas the fuel cell has 2 batteries. The other difference is that the hydrogen fuel cell comes with 5 14 kg hydrogen storage tanks. 3 of those kind of go up onto the backpack of the truck, and then there's 1 on each side of the truck. With regards to the range, you can see that there's pretty great improvement as it relates to an ICE vehicle. What I find the most impressive and things that really gets me excited about coming to work every day is how much of the metric tons of CO2 we reduce by each truck that's on the road. So for every one of our fuel cell trucks, 97 metric tons of CO2 are reduced. So the more that we can improve the market and push this mobility market forward, the much better that air quality and just better aspect of life that I think our future generations are going to have. So we're pretty proud of that. Another final thing here is that what's unique at our Coolidge manufacturing facility is that we have actually both trucks are both manufactured on one platform, meaning we can diversify based off customers' needs the trucks that we manufacture, and we can do them and build a BEV and a fuel cell on the same line. We don't need to work different lines, so we're fairly efficient as to producing our vehicles. We just publicly announced our 300th VIN came off the line for the fuel cell just about a week ago. Now on to HYLA. We developed HYLA. The first part of HYLA is hydrogen. The last part is the last two letters of Nikola. We wanted to have a brand that we felt that the market could all feel comfortable filling up at, that you didn't have to have a Nikola vehicle to fill up at a HYLA station, that the HYLA station is available for all. Our HYLA role is really, we work across the entire value stream. So the entire ecosystem is important to us. Everything from hydrogen supply to distribution and finally into dispensing. Again, enabling a market that we can bring a demand, which is the fuel cell truck. On the hydrogen side, I think many of you have heard a lot of the partners that we work with on the market, Air Liquide, Air Products, Linde. These IGCs, industrial gas companies, have been producing hydrogen for well over 50 years in North America. We do work with them on offtake contracts, meaning those agreements where we obtain the hydrogen, where they produce the hydrogen. Many will talk about colors of hydrogen, whether it be gray, pink, or green. A lot of that is driven by the feedstock that it comes from, whether it be natural gas, nuclear, or more importantly, when it comes from renewables, stranded renewables, or even just wind, solar, things that are very much green. This is, where you kind of get a lot of the colors that the market talks about. Distribution, we work with companies such as Pilot, for example, who moves the molecule. So we got to get it from one location to our dispensing location. Pilot is a partner of ours that we proudly work with, and they are very much early adopters in this space. Finally, an area where we spend a lot of our time and an area that we find is our niche is on the infrastructure development side and really the dispensing side of the business. We do that in two ways, one through modular solutions and a second through more permanent stations. And I have a map here I can show the audience as to where we're operating in 2024 and kind of our thoughts about how we do this in the market. By the end of this year, we'll have expected to put out 10 operational HYLA solutions. Some of those are already operational. As you can see, we have our Coolidge location. We have Ontario, California, Long Beach, and Santa Fe Springs. We also have a location in Toronto, Canada. Some of our partner stations, we do work with First Element Fuel in Oakland, and then we work with Shell in the Ontario location. Ideally, our intention is that we put out modular solutions because we can get to market a lot quicker. The main thing here is safely and reliable to market. So we're going to look at doing everything that we operate safely, and then we're going to put 2 to 3 modular locations around an area and build the demand. For every modular solution, we can get to market within 4 to 6 months. That's everything from concept through permitting, commissioning, and into operations. It allows us to seed the market at a very low cost, at the same time building density, so that way we can build in more long-term permanent solutions. But as many of you recognize, permanent solutions take anywhere between 2 to 3 years. So we want to be aware that we've got to help the market grow and scale, at the same time looking at more longer-term solutions, which is the permanent options. What we don't share on this map is the 4 permanent solutions that we're currently working. We have one in Victorville, another one in Colton, and another in Otay Mesa. Those are HYLA permanent stations that we expect to be operational in 2026. Each one of those stations can have a capacity to do up to 200 fills per day, which is great.
3
Our
minutes
modulars
remaining.
Our modulars can do anywhere between 40 and 50 fills per day, depending on the type of fuelers and requirements that we have on site. The fourth station that we'll do in 2026 is with another partner, which is Pilot out of Rialto. Again, focusing on the ecosystem ourselves, some of the projects we're starting to look and focus more on is regarding to stranded renewables. Important that we start doing green activities. One is making sure that the market has hydrogen. Two is ensuring that they have a green product in the market. In some cases, how we do that is through electrolysis. In other cases, it depends on our technology team and what they decide to do. But again, we may go SMR and then green later. But ideally, an SMR means steam methane reforming, which is more of a traditional method. It's all about our customer and how we get to market fairly quickly. The last thing I'll share here is just a picture which I find representative of how our beginnings, how we started in the early days. And this is our first site in Guasti, which is right down the street from the airport. We built this with our partner Biagi Brothers, who moves product for Anheuser-Busch. They come out of their facility every day with the trucks that they've procured from us. They fill up at the station and off they run with their routes for the day. And we are grateful that they've been part of our process and part of our history of building out the Hyla brand and building out the infrastructure that we have done so far. I'm going to close it there and open it up for any questions.
Thank you. And listening to your presentation, you mentioned you had several temporary, or you're working with some of these temporary stations. How long are these temporary stations kept in one location?
Yeah, so we'll keep the locations there for up until the permanent location is either built and or until we have, predominantly until the permanent station is built. So it could be up to 2 to 3 years at any given time. A lot of cases it's based off of the contract that we made with the landowner, and sometimes in cases with the local jurisdictions. If they're really happy with the way we're progressing, then we'll try to keep our location open as long as we can. The customer demand is there, then we obviously want to make sure that they can fill. To subset of that question would also be, why do we have 2 or 3? Is we want a reliable network. We know that as new technology comes out, that reliability is a challenge. We're not going to say that it's not. So we want to ensure that if a location goes down or we have to make a repair on a pump or a cold end, that we can send our customers just a few miles down the road to a secondary location to fill. Most importantly for the trucking businesses, that they can get on with their day and they feel like they have a great customer experience by just knowing my job is to fill and to move on.
Thank you. And last that I have is, are you aware of any existing incentives, government incentives, that are unique to the hydrogen technology?
So we work with the Caltrans with regards to our permanent stations. So we've been fortunate enough to be awarded funding for phase 1 and beyond into phase 3, I think it is, of the TCEP funding for our permanent stations. We've been very grateful for that. With regards to the modular side, there's actually really not a lot of funding when it comes to these modular solutions. That'd be something we'd be very interested in because, again, deploying this, being the first out there to deploy a modular solution in North America is key for our success. It's key to kind of keep building the market, and it's scaling the market for others to fuel. So I think there's some incentives there that could be very beneficial for us if they're out there.
Thank you. Yes, Deputy Controller, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. I want to thank you, sir, for your presentation.
Yes, sir.
The company name Nikola, where did that inspire from?
I think back in 2015, Nikola Tesla was obviously a pioneer in a lot of this space. Elon Musk had already taken Tesla, so I think Nikola just made sense.
Oh, nice. That's maybe a good sign of good luck.
We'll see.
Yeah, yes, sir. And sir, as you're building out your own United States hubs, and are you looking around the world too for international standards being developed for hydrogen quality and safety? For example, in Germany, we had Toyota representatives speak about what's happening in Japan. Are we taking some of those ideas and standards and bringing them here at least the practical ones in the United States, especially California?
Yeah, I would say actually, if you really think about the companies that are in the hydrogen space, these are Japanese companies, these are Korean companies, these are German companies. So a lot of the pioneers of this space actually are international companies. I would say in some cases, the standards don't necessarily always translate over, but what we look at is, do we comply with J2601-5, for example, or NFPA2 type of regulations and compliance activities? Yes, we do. So we'll always try to make sure we can standardize. I think that's something the industry has somewhere to go. If you look at just nozzle sizing with regards to heavy duty, light duty, we could talk about that for quite some time with our technical people. But again, I think we're all in a very small space. It seems like it's very large, but it's very small space. So
Understood, and that's a good response. And you really mentioned my last question about these plug-in stations, that it could be a non-Nikola car. So is it a universal plug-in switch that another hydrogen car or truck company
Yes.
can plug in?
Yeah, so by the way, we focus on heavy duty. So for us, we focus predominantly on the Class 8 hydrogen larger trucks at this stage. So as we're focusing on the large trucks, we go back to an old model where we have ambassadors, meaning the truck drivers come up, we have people on staff, they will fill the truck for them. There's going to be a period of time where, as they get educated on how to fill, because this is different than filling a diesel truck, as they get educated on how to fill, it will become more traditional, where they will pull up to a permanent station, fill the trucks themselves. But for the time being, we are filling the trucks on their behalf.
Got it. Good luck to you and your entire company on this venture, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? I think we're good. Thank you for your presentation and your time.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
We're going to take a break right now for staff. So we're to 10 minutes, so it's 2:35. We'll come back at 2:45. Thank you. hydrogen industry for California, incentives for promoting interest and growth. Our first speaker for this item is Teresa Cook, Executive Director, California Hydrogen Coalition, and partner and California Lobby. Here she comes. Yes, we got her on.
She's running down the side.
Yes,
Here we
she's
go.
going to come right down. Yes. Thank you, Ms. Cook. You will have 10 minutes to make your presentation. Yeah, no, I'll wait for you. Thank you.
I apologize for that. Okay, let me just get myself together. Great. Good afternoon. My name is Teresa Cook. I am the Executive Director and Contract Lobbyist for the California Hydrogen Coalition. We were founded in 2019, and our membership consists of the really big players in the hydrogen space related to production, distribution, refueling, as well as end uses like zero-emission fuel cell electric trucks and cars and buses and others. A great discussion today. We're very excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us and for having this hearing. Before I jump in on my prepared comments, I want to respond to some of the questions that you members have raised. Really terrific questions, actually. I'm very excited about them. First, Mr. Emron, you made a point about drilling hydrogen, and I just wanted to clarify that there is some evidence in other parts of the world that pockets of naturally forming hydrogen do exist under the earth, but for today and for the foreseeable future, we're going to be making hydrogen, not drilling hydrogen.
Has California done a survey to see if there's some geological hydrogen?
Not that I'm aware of.
And would that be paid for by a private company, or would the government be paying for that?
Well, I will tell you, recognizing the writing on the wall of all of our statutory requirements, there is definitely an incentive to do it big here, and I could foresee a scenario where the private sector wants to do land surveying to see if there is anything naturally occurring. I haven't heard of any plans to do so. I can ask and follow back up with your office, but for now, one of the challenges and benefits of hydrogen is it is a thing that we have to make. We don't just find it somewhere else. But I think it's the nexus to the oil and gas industry and the refining process that it kind of goes, it gets slipped in as something that, we drill for in the earth. Senator Gaines, you talked about the high cost of the trucks, and I just wanted to point out that an equally big consideration for fleet operators is the cost of maintenance. If we can't produce this fuel at a cost that is competitive with diesel, we're dead on arrival. And so that is equally as important, if not a little bit more, than bringing down the cost of the trucks, which we can do as we get to scale. Mr. Emron, you made a point about the refueling speed of these stations that we're seeing. And so Jackie Birdsall from Toyota kind of confirmed that it took anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes for a heavy-duty truck to refuel at a fueling station. Assuming that you have enough fuel on site, that's about 70 trucks per day just using one pump.
I come from a family of truck drivers, and my family members are so proud they have a Peterbilt truck. They say it goes 1,000,000 miles, 1,000,000+1. These hydrogen cell trucks, what's the life range on them? Can they go that distance? Can they go that long?
The range of them or the vehicle longevity?
Vehicle longevity.
Absolutely. So one of the coolest experiments that we have unintentionally discovered is the long life of the fuel cell buses that have been operational in California for about 20 years now. So a lot of people don't know that in the Coachella Valley, Sunline Transit is one of the earliest adopters of fuel cell buses, as is AC Transit. Their expectation was that these vehicles would be on the road for, 5 years and that they would need a major overhaul or expensive retrofitting or something like that. That is not the case, and they are still absolutely workhorses. So very proud of the longevity story of these vehicles. On the topic of water usage when it comes to hydrogen production, it's important to point out that 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 is less than the amount of water used in the refining process. And if it's not obvious, hydrogen means to supplant refining of oil and gas one of these days. So we would have a lower water footprint than they do. Also, we would use non-potable water. One of the coolest projects that has been announced is in the Central Valley. A company called Plug Power has taken over a solar farm, and as a part of like a good community benefits partner, is rebuilding the wastewater treatment plant in Mendota, so that, you know, we have reusable water for the community, but also we can use some of the water to produce electrolytic renewable hydrogen. So lots of opportunities to do things like that as well.
Is that water taken from the San Joaquin River?
I don't know. I think it's wastewater.
Okay, thank you.
And then let me, another thing you pointed out, the standardization of equipment. One of the things that the hydrogen community did really well is it got together before it started producing anything or building anything to make sure that all of our equipment talked to each other, and that we didn't have a situation where this fleet of vehicles responds to this kind of fueling infrastructure and this type of vehicle responds to this one. It is all standardized from the beginning. The only difference is that heavy duty has a different size nozzle. Light duty, which includes medium duty trucks and the Mirai, have a smaller size nozzle. So that's the only difference. And we would never refuel at home. The benefit of hydrogen is that it is almost a one-to-one replacement for the oil and gas experience. So our hydrogen fueling stations are co-located at existing gas stations. That centralized fueling model is really what's going to allow individuals who live in this state, who maybe live in an apartment or don't have, access to reliable, predictable charging, to take advantage of a zero-emission technology, because they can just go refuel for 5 minutes at the gas station, but instead of the gas pump, they're going to the hydrogen pump. Okay, so jumping into my prepared comments very quickly, 40% of energy in California comes from natural gas. 90% of transportation comes from gas as well. I think it is very obvious that we cannot electrify our way to a clean energy and transportation future. We're going to have to come up with our permanent alternative solution to the gas sector, and that is what hydrogen is. We're sort of the end of the road in that space for them. But based on some of the political receptivity, not all folks agree with that. We don't exactly have a red carpet rolled out for us very often, and I will be very honest with you about that today, and hopefully that's okay. Sometimes we come by it honestly, right? So the first thing that I would like BoE to be aware of is the taxation structure around hydrogen as a fuel. In the past, hydrogen has been used for many industrial processes, and it was applied a sales and use tax. However, we are now beginning to make hydrogen for the transportation sector. We are still charging drivers a sales and use tax. Meanwhile, SB 1, adopted by the legislature a couple of years ago, put an additional fee on zero-emission vehicles, including fuel cells, to pay for their fair share of transportation infrastructure projects. So what I'm saying is that hydrogen vehicles, drivers are taxed twice, whereas battery electric vehicles are only taxed once. They pay that registration fee, but they don't pay any additional taxes or fees at the point of recharging their vehicle. So as California looks to restructure in a sustainable way how we pay for transportation infrastructure, our community would ask BoE and other taxation entities to please push for an equalization of the way that we are treating, by way of taxes, both battery electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles. We think it should be a level playing field between the two. But, we didn't know 20 years ago that we were going to be talking about hydrogen as a transportation fuel. So again, we came by it honestly, but it does need to be corrected, and we hope to work with you on that.
2 minutes remaining.
Okay, local government permitting. Sometimes people just don't know. Other times it's a little bit more nefarious. And so you've heard loud and clear that that is a place that we need to do some work, bringing more support for this technologies. Other times, it's more, adversarial, I will. California has 150 years of experience making, handling, transporting, and using hydrogen. So it's important that we all recognize that this isn't a brand-new thing that we don't know what to do with. We have safety standards in place. Everything has been pretty thoroughly thought out. Mr. Emran, you also asked about encouraging investment in the state. This is something that BoE may also be able to help us do. Currently, CDTFA has ownership of the partial sales and use tax exemption for advanced manufacturing equipment. We have been repeatedly told that hydrogen fueling infrastructure doesn't qualify, despite the fact that the intent of that program really was intended to support emerging technologies like this. And so even though the appellate division over at CDTFA agrees with industry that we should qualify, the staff and executive level, for whatever reason, continue disagreeing with that. So that is a major barrier to us trying to bring down the cost in something that already exists. We don't have to have a new program or a new bill. And very quickly, on the topic of renewable versus traditional hydrogen with natural gas, our industry is committed to using natural gas or renewable hydrogen. We have thrice introduced legislation to set a standard, so please don't let anybody tell you that we are afraid of renewable. We're absolutely not. But I think it's important to note that Environmental Quality Committee killed a bill earlier this year that would have allowed local governments to use some of their organic waste diversion requirements to make hydrogen. So we're eliminating opportunities to produce renewable hydrogen and meet other mandates for nonsense reasons, to be frank. And then the other point that I would make is we cannot at the same time demand exclusively renewable hydrogen and then go out of our way to limit the end uses. So any sort of discussion around like, well, it only makes sense to use hydrogen in this narrow application and this narrow application, that idea doesn't jive well with the very ambitious and serious requirements that California has statutorily passed about our carbon neutrality goals and zero emission vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. We need to use everything in the toolbox. We need to encourage its growth as much as possible so we're successful at the end of the day. And CHC wants to be a partner to you in every single way that we can do that. And we thank you for your time today.
No, thank you for your comments. And I think you've raised some real good issues and questions. And I'm just thinking, based on your experience, especially using your other hat as a lobbyist too, what do you think are some of the impediments? And I think you kind of touched on them already with some of the legislators moving forward, because it sounds like we have a real good partnership developing, at least with two of our senators. And I know others on the Assembly side are interested and willing to work with us as well.
There are a lot of ways to answer that question, but I think the biggest barrier is the connection that hydrogen has to the oil and gas industry, because hydrogen is used in the refining process, makes hydrogen suspect because of the companies we work with. There are a lot in the capital community that would just prefer to see the oil and gas industry go away completely and let's electrify everything exclusively. And because we are affiliated with like that central refueling model, and refineries can move from producing fuel, they can start producing hydrogen. These are companies that, the more progressive environmental leaning organizations don't want to see operating in California anymore. So for those reasons, we run into a lot of really wonderful progressive Democrats who are very afraid to be supportive of hydrogen for fear of the retribution from their environmental colleagues that hydrogen is a lifeline for the oil and gas industry, and they shouldn't be given one. Notwithstanding the jobs impact that the Port of Long Beach talked about, these are immediately transferable jobs. If you know how to make a pipeline for natural gas, you know how to make a pipeline for hydrogen.
Interesting question. Yeah, I was wondering about that, because you're right. At the end of the day, a lot of these, especially these stations, they're all set up in gas stations, basically.
Correct. Yep.
Because we had one in Santa Monica, and I was surprised that it's real adaptive.
Jackie mentioned the huge discrepancy we see in the level of support given for battery electric vehicle infrastructure and hydrogen infrastructure. She said 10 cents. My numbers are closer to 5 cents or 5% of funding. It's interesting, a lot of people don't know this. 1,000 strategically located hydrogen fueling stations would be able to provide fueling access to 94% of the geographic state and 98% of disadvantaged communities. Because we can refuel so many cars so quickly, we have a wonderful access opportunity that isn't always appreciated like it could be.
No, that repurpose of gas stations makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And these are, a lot of times family-owned businesses.
Right.
And we want to be able to give everybody in this energy sector, whether it's an oil company or it's a gas utility or if it's a mom and pop gas station, an opportunity to transition and be a part of our clean energy future instead of pushing them out of it.
Appreciate it. Deputy Controller, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. I want to thank you for your presentation. Helped clear up a lot of my questions. As I think about this process, and I believe in order for us to move forward, everyone has to jump into the ring, right? And we were hearing earlier, Toyota, some startup trucking companies, but how do we get American car manufacturers like GM in the mix, Chevy in the mix, and even European car manufacturers also, all to buy in on this idea, push research and development, the manufacturing of vehicles, if you have any recommendations?
I sure do. Thank you for opening that door. I'm going to run right through it. So I talk regularly to the team at Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. So they're the maker of, I think, Dodge Ram. They all have plans for fuel cell electric medium-duty trucks. Their market is the construction worker, the fleet truck. They are unwilling and unable to bring their zero-emission trucks to market until California has more than 50 fueling stations. We were supposed to have 200 fueling stations by 2025. We were supposed to have 50 fueling stations by 2021. We are woefully behind and, quite frankly, have a lot of challenges with your colleagues at the Energy Commission about a more fair distribution of infrastructure dollars so that hydrogen also has an opportunity to grow. And to add on to that, I will say, my members would be horrified with me if I ever said one technology was better than the other. They're absolutely not. Jackie used the term synergistic. Agree with that here. One of the best parts of hydrogen, and it was acknowledged in the creation of the Hydrogen Hub, is there is a pathway to profitability in the hydrogen space. The transportation and energy sector can make money by moving into hydrogen. We just need to help them in the early years. And so the Air Resources Board did an analysis in 2022 about what it was going to take for hydrogen infrastructure to be self-sufficient. We don't want to subsidize you anymore. What's it going to take for you guys to stand on your own? And the dollar figure they came to was $300 million. Compare that to the unknown cost of what it's going to be for California to accept the sole responsibility of building out enough charging stations to electrify every single vehicle in California and doing it themselves. Because unfortunately, there isn't the same profitability proposition that exists with charging infrastructure quite like it does with hydrogen. And so my point here being that we need fueling infrastructure to bring these vehicles to market so that drivers know that they can get hydrogen fuel within 15 minutes, 5 minutes, and be on their way. We can do that because we have a heck of a lot of private interest in doing so, but I think California could be a better partner to us if it wanted to be.
Well, point well taken. We had a presentation earlier by the Arches. There's seven hydrogen hubs across the country. Do you see any other parts of the country, any other regions doing it better than California, or something California can take some lessons to learn from? I know West Virginia and the Appalachians and a few Pacific Northwest, they're well underway as well.
I think every hydrogen hub is a little afraid of what's going to happen in the next couple months. We don't know what the decision will be with the 45V tax credit that Senator Allen talked about, but the requirements that the environmental community wanted included within that clean hydrogen production tax credit were an absolute non-starter for the industry, and the program would have fallen apart. Thankfully, that's why California's CEC, CARB, and other agencies said that we didn't need the 3 pillars in California. We already have other programs that take care of that. So I think everybody's afraid. It depends on how some of these tax credits are interpreted. And I look at states like Texas as being very bullish in wanting to take advantage of their existing natural resource or their natural gas infrastructure and production, et cetera. Hydrogen seems like an easier transition for them. Here in California, too often we're getting the signal of we're not even sure we want you guys at the table. So, you know, how we are met and how we are embraced is a big element in how much we can do here in the state versus others.
Understood. I hope this is the start to something.
I think so.
Something fruitful and beneficial. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Member Gaines, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just still trying to figure out this transition for truckers from diesel. And I just read recently that a lot of these truckers are going to have to convert to electric. And they're having problems trying to figure out how they make that transition. But it sounds like hydrogen has opportunities because based on what Nikolai was saying, you've got a longer range through a hydrogen source of power versus electric. So number one, I don't know how the truckers are going to meet it. And then secondly, what are the options? And electric may be viable for shorter haul, but I'm concerned about this long haul trucker transition.
Yeah, you should be. We put into place some really ambitious requirements and didn't necessarily think through the roadmap of how we were going to successfully get there with the least amount of pain possible. One of the other things that I would introduce related to heavy-duty hydrogen trucks is the ability to have that 80,000 load in the back without it disrupting or lessening the range of the vehicle or the vehicle's ability to like get up and over
Passes.
Yes, right.
Donner Pass.
Yeah.
Grapevine.
Yes,
yeah.
grapevine, right, exactly, thank you. It doesn't do you any good if you can't get the goods to a warehouse or anywhere else. And that is one of the beautiful parts of a fuel cell vehicle is we do not have a big battery on board that sucks up all of the weight capacity.
Great, thank you.
And the power of the vehicle is not limited to what that battery has available to it in the moment. It is the fuel that we have on board that powers that battery. The battery isn't our power, it's the
Yes.
hydrogen fuel cell stack.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to working with you in the future here.
As well.
Who do we have next, Mrs. Skinner?
We have one more speaker, Olman Valverde. He's a secretary, Hispanics in Energy.
Welcome.
Yes, just to clarify, you have 10 minutes to make your presentation. Thank you.
I think you're muted, though. Check your mute button.
Let's see, how's that?
That,
Can you guys
that
hear me
sounds better. Now I can hear you. I can
Okay.
see you and hear you now.
All right. Well, good afternoon. My name is Olman Valverde, and today I'm here on behalf of Hispanics in Energy. We're a nonprofit organization, and our goal is to enhance Hispanic participation in the United States energy industry. You know, Hispanics are America's largest minority group and represent 40% of Californians. I want to thank Mr. Vasquez for providing us the opportunity to participate in today's meeting. I also want to thank the chair and the board members for your time. There are 3 things I want to share generally. First, I'll provide you with a brief introduction to what our group, to our organization. Second, I'll share why we, the organization, believe it's important to engage with arches and hydrogen. And third, I'm going to provide some thoughts about areas that need to be improved. So I'll just start saying, energy, that the amount of energy we consume in the United States is incredibly enormous, and it keeps on growing. So California needs to be doing everything we can to increase our capacity to produce more energy. We also need to expand our technologies for creating energy, and we need to expand the people that we bring in to make that happen. Just some quick numbers. In 2022, U.S. consumers spent $1.7 trillion on energy. In California, in that time, the total expenditure was $200 billion. So the market is huge and the demand continues to increase. And it's really been this way, for a long time. So due to this incredible economic opportunity, Hispanics in Energy, or HIE, was established in 2012, and it was inspired by utility commissioners. In the beginning, the group was focused on creating engagement with utilities, but over the years, the group has grown, and now the scope encompasses all aspects of energy, including solar, clean energy, nuclear, oil and gas, and now hydrogen. So while the scope of the organization has grown, the mandate remains the same: to increase Hispanic participation in jobs and businesses in the energy industry. So in 2024, throughout this year, we focused on the 7 hydrogen hubs that the Department of Energy established. And we organized 5 forums throughout the country to get the word out about the hubs and to tell our businesses and community leaders about the great economic potential that the hubs are going to create. So we started with doing a forum in Sacramento for the Arches Hub. We then went to Houston and did a forum for their hub called High Velocity. We went out to Chicago and did one for that forum called Mach 2. And then we've also done forums in Philadelphia and most recently in Seattle for the Pacific Northwest Hydrogen Hub. So we started in June and spent the summer getting the word out. So the question is, why are we doing this? Why are you putting so much energy into hydrogen? So our organization has made a commitment, especially here with Arches, because of the economic impact that it can unleash. According to the Arches proposal, the impacts can be significant and long-lasting. So it's 222,000 new jobs being created. There will be an investment of $229 million in workforce development. There's a commitment to provide $150 million in direct community benefits. And overall, there'll be $12 billion spent, invested, encompassing private, public, and state investments. So for us, for Hispanics in Energy, our mission is to bring awareness and transparency to the process so that our members, partners, community stakeholders can be in the best position to participate and compete for these economic benefits. We support policies that will help foster the hydrogen industry in California. I'll mention 3 things. The state budget process. So my understanding is that the governor's office has made commitments to provide funding to develop hydrogen in California. Now we know that the state budget is tight, but it will be very important to show the commitment with financial support for Arches in the state budget. This is actually more important now due to the uncertainty as to federal energy policy and funding priorities in the new administration in Washington, D.C. We got to think of a tax holiday. The amount of capital that will be expended to build hydrogen infrastructure is going to be enormous, right? At least $12 billion as set forth in the Arches proposal, and possibly more. Those funds will generate jobs and local contracting opportunities that will spread to many of our residents. So we therefore believe it's important to consider a tax holiday for hydrogen businesses to help them get off the ground to be able to succeed. But we also understand that there's conflicts. And for instance, there's conflicts with utilities that need to be worked out. For example, there was an effort to provide a low-cost tariff for electrolyzers so that these facilities can access cheap electricity during times when there is a lot of low carbon electricity available, but that's being opposed. At the same time, there is opposition to removing regulations that would allow electrolyzers to contract directly with generators of wind and solar power directly without incurring oversight by the PUC. So, these type of conflicts and competing interests are there and they need to be resolved. I want to switch gears a little bit and just talk about areas where we believe protections are needed. So we believe that the industry has to be fostered, but we're not saying that all guardrails should be removed. And there was one thing in particular that thing that stands out to me. As I look at the various bills dealing with hydrogen, I don't see that any come with teeth to protect the promises that are being made. And absent is a commitment to equal opportunity for jobs, for businesses, and for services. So, there are promises of great jobs, promises of opportunities for small business, promises of community benefits. What seems to be missing is an enforcement mechanism to hold projects accountable for delivering on those promises. In the lead up to the hubs, there was a sense that Justice 40 would be the mechanism to deliver to communities, and that the Federal Department of Energy would enforce it. Justice 40 is an initiative by President Biden, but that provision is at risk, according to messaging that we're receiving from the administration in D.C.
3 minutes
So
remaining.
it could be gone soon. Thank you. It could be gone soon, and that's just a new reality. So, in the anticipated absence of the federal government being an enforcer, the responsibility falls even heavier on us in California to make sure that the promises are being delivered to California residents. So I say put teeth into all the incentives that provide equal opportunities for all Californians and promote equal participation by all. This includes data collection to determine diverse community participation. For communities not fully participating, mandate outreach and development to make the system treat all groups equally. No one should fall behind. So if we provide a tax holiday or provide state funding to projects, or if we allow projects to receive fast track permitting, all these incentives need to come with obligations to deliver on the promise of community benefits and providing equal opportunities for job seekers and small businesses. Now, I know that Arches has a plan for tracking compliance, but in the absence of federal willingness to enforce Justice 40, then there's a need for oversight from the state. At a minimum, metrics should be developed to measure success that reflects where we are in California today. We, HIE, are prepared to offer our expertise to help develop an equal opportunity program for all that Arches has to offer in the manner that's consistent with state and federal laws and practices, and help realize equal opportunity for all Californians. As I said before, no one group should be left behind. So just to say and close, there are organizations like Hispanics in Energy that are ready to help. I know that the small business chambers are ready to help, and California's Hispanic serving institutions are ready to help. And we're ready to partner with you to make this happen. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thank you for the introduction. I mean, that's how I first found out about these hydrogen, the whole industry, is when you reached out and I actually sat on a panel with you. Appreciate it. Moving forward, though, as I'm listening to your presentation, you obviously touched on one in terms of what are some of the conditions as we start preparing possible incentives or tax credits, that we make sure that the whatever legislation we do create has some teeth in terms of monitoring and guaranteeing that these commitments, especially on the community benefits, actually get, they follow through on those. I was wondering, is there any examples out there, as you've been traveling across the country, you mentioned Philadelphia, Seattle, Chicago, and some of these other areas where there's hubs up and running. Is anybody more advanced or ahead of us at this point?
Yeah, so up to now, the enforcement is contractual, right? So the projects that they're going to be approved by Arches, have a contractual obligation, in their funding mechanisms, and that was going to be through the Department of Energy. But so that is probably going to go away. That initiative was a presidential executive order, which most likely is going to be gone, in the first day, if not the first week of the new administration. So at this point, no, there isn't really a specific example. I mean, I think California, we're going to have to be on the lead on this, just as we often are. The PUC has a program, right? The Supplier Diversity Program, but that I don't think that is maybe a good example. I actually think their program's a little weak in their goals and not delivering as it should.
Appreciate it. Deputy Controller.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Thank you, Mr. Valverde, for your continued advocacy and what is a very important topic. I wanted to talk about the potential impact on farmers. One of the byproducts of hydrogen can be used to make ammonia, a key component in the production of nitrogen fertilizers. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has disrupted the fertilizer market much across the globe to the detriment of farmers here in California and across the nation. Can you speak to the importance of hydrogen to the farming industry in particular, and what kind of benefits may farmers see as a result of the emergence of hydrogen?
I can't speak particular to the benefits to farmers, but I will say that the Central Valley is going to be heavily impacted by this. If you look at the tier one projects that Arches has proposed, most of the production, the hydrogen production, is going to be in the Central Valley. So and these plants will probably be placed in rural communities. So there's going to be a lot of impact to those communities. So it really begs the question that we need to get in front of the outreach to these communities so that they know that this is happening, so that in terms of community benefits, so that they can really start voicing what they're looking for and what their concerns are. And get those local leaders, get those local elected leaders involved, really early on in the process. One of the frustrations I have right now is the tier one projects that Arches has improved. They're not publicly available, so it's really hard to get ahead of it to know, what areas and what potential locations are going to be impacted. All we know, Central Valley for sure. And then, up and down, like the I-5 corridor.
Absolutely, absolutely. We had an Arches representative earlier. We were talking about disseminating that information in a timely manner. And then to your point about the Central Valley, they've long shouldered the burden of energy independence of California, especially places like Kern County, Bakersfield. And I hope that they, as we make this transition, that they're first in line when it comes to high-paying jobs, when it comes to hydrogen storage. Because they rightfully deserve it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and so that's the promise. So yeah, I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that those promises are delivered. You mentioned, I just want to make a point about, I've heard about trucking and trucking costs, retrofitting. Retrofitting is an option that's out there, for existing diesel trucks. They can be retrofitted to have hydrogen fuel cells, as their power source. So that, that might be a transition technology that, especially if people have privately owned trucks, it'd be a lot more cheaper for them instead of buying a new hydrogen vehicle to retrofit their existing diesel. And that actually gets a diesel truck off the road rather than that truck being sold, down the market.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vasquez, I yield it back to you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I think we're good. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
We are at the end of our speakers right now, so you're up to item 27, which is the board discussion and closing remarks for each member for the informational hearing. You know what, before we do that, let's go to public comment since we're at the end for the informational hearing. Would you
Sure.
mind if I called that?
Go ahead.
Okay. Let's see here. we're doing a public comment for informational hearing on understanding and exploring options for incentivizing California's hydrogen hub project. We don't have any written comments or anyone in the auditorium who wishes to make a public comment on this item. Therefore, AT&T moderator, is there anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment regarding this item?
If anyone on the phones would like to make a comment on this item, please press 1 followed by 0 at this time, and the operator will answer your line and further instruct you from there. Once again, on the phones, if you do have a question a public comment at this time, press 1 followed by 0. 1 moment, please. And once again, on the phones, if you do have a public comment at this time, it is 1, then 0.
Okay.
Madam Chair, we have no lines in queue.
Thank you. Then we're at the point of having board discussion and closing remarks.
Thank you. Let me just start, and then I'll turn to my my colleagues here. First of all, I think we've had a very thorough meeting today, including testimony, especially from the Arches folks, our legislators, some assessors, in the industry representatives. We have received a lot of input and exciting some of these programs that are out there, especially on the community side and those that are actually in the field, both on the hydrogen side and on the solar side as well. With that, I'd like to open this up to our board members to see if there's any comments, suggestions, input as we move forward. And just to let you know that my staff will take responsibility in terms of putting together the minutes and some recommendations, something that we could hopefully use as a template, and then depending on what other feedback we get from the other offices, we'll try to incorporate them so we could have hopefully a working document, because at some point I think it'd be appropriate to share it with some of the legislators that we've had here today, that it looks like they're interested in working with us on some possible legislation to expedite and move this thing forward. But with that, let me start with our Deputy Controller.
I want to first recognize and thank you, Mr. Vasquez. I want to thank your staff as well. It was a heavy lift, but that was an all-star lineup, and I got to learn so much about the hydrogen process. And echoing Senator Allen's comments from this morning, we had the Insurance Commission hearing last month, and we have this hydrogen information hearing this month. It just shows the Board of Equalization's broad reach. And such important topics, such emerging topics in California. And I'm really, really happy that we're stepping up to the plate, and I believe we have incredible momentum to end this year and going into 2025. I'm really looking forward to it. So once again, thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Really appreciate it. And happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Vasquez, and your staff as well, and all of our professional staff who hung in here with us today for going through this hearing. And I think it gave us a number of very valuable perspectives. And we are entering a brand new 2-year session, so I anticipate that there will be bills coming forward. And looking forward to having been informed by this hearing as some handhold points on those. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gaines.
Yeah, thank you so much. I learned a lot today, a lot of questions that were answered, and look forward to what might be presented to us in terms of collaborative efforts working with the legislature. And so thank you. I appreciate this. It was well done, well organized. Member Vasquez, and just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. We've got a lot to be grateful for, and can't wait to break into that turkey. So thank you.
No, thank you all, and thank you to my staff and then our BoE staff in terms of just the support we received. Really appreciate it. And just want to, again, for those that hopefully that are listening or maybe looking to read our minutes later, just thanking all the presenters, especially the legislators to have two of our senators who are in the mix, especially the one, Mr. Archuleta, who's actually chairing the committee that this is really falls under. Looking forward to working with him as we move forward. And like I said, we'll be putting together the minutes and some recommendations, and then we'll share it with the board and see if there's any comments, suggestions, or anything that maybe we left out as we're putting this together, the draft. Really appreciate it and looking forward to this next session. And like the Madam Chair mentions, this is an opportunity. This next year starts a 2-year process, so it may take a 2 year, depending on how intense and how elaborate we get with some of this legislation. With that, let me turn it back over to Ms. Cicchetti. I guess we're looking at now closing remarks. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Well, our last item for today is our adjournment, and I want to thank the member staff who have hung in here, agency staff who have hung in here with us, some folks from the lobbying corps who have hung in here with us, and members of the public, and definitely all of our presenters. We will now adjourn the board meeting. Our next board meeting is Tuesday and Wednesday, December 17 and 18, 2024, at 10 a.m. here at the Maley Office Complex in Sacramento. Thank you.
And that does conclude our